swapping hockey injury stories was fun.
God, too many. That's why I quit playing.
Ooh. What was that politician that was Ross Perot's running mate? Who am I and what am I doing here? The heck was that guy's name? You know what I'm talking about? Not a clue.
No.
Do you remember when Ross Perot ran?
I do remember that.
He had, I think he was a general? A general or an admiral, the gentleman, he was retired. That was his vice presidential running mate. In the middle of the debate, he just blurted out, who am I and what am I doing here? He was being rhetorical, but it didn't go over well.
They probably thought, if you don't know, then we don't know.
Yeah. Needless to say, Saturday Night Live had fun with that the next day.
I was gonna say, I bet that made it to the skit.
Oh, yeah. They actually had a car. They had Ross Perot, the guy, I think it was David Spade playing Ross Perot driving away. And the guy's like trying to run. He's, where are you
Admiral
going? He goes, no, you
James?
just stay here.
Admiral James Stockdale,
That's it.
1992 running mate of Ross Perot.
Oh, Lord. So, Tom, what did what the governor do today actually mean?
What are you talking about?
Which thing?
I've been at work all day.
Suspended the emergency orders and all that?
The governor did an executive order that invalidated any previous local executive
Right.
orders that were based on COVID.
There you go. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't read it.
Because every article I tried to read, it didn't actually explain anything.
Yeah, you can go right to the governor's website and plug it in and ask for executive orders, and then you can pop up and it'll show the most recent ones, and you can read it right on the website.
All right.
That's how I do it.
101.
What is it?
Number 101.
There you go.
101. How are you?
Hi, Pam.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. You waiting on Sean and
Ginger's gonna be late. She sent Anna a message. She'll be a little bit late.
About 20 minutes, he said.
Are we allowed to start without her, or do we?
We have enough, yeah.
Okay, Sean just emailed me, he's gonna have to miss, newborn at home and mom's still recovering.
Ooh,
Okay.
that's a valid reason.
we just need 4 for the quorum, and obviously we have that.
Yeah, so we're good.
I thought maybe Sean was still recovering from the hot wing eating contest that him and I were in.
Where was that?
At Oldsmar
Oldsmar Days.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, it was Steve Graver and Dan and I, Steve Graver and Sean and I, the chamber got us to go on we were the city team. We were against Mark, Jason's, and Doug Beavis, and they won.
They were hot.
They ate the chicken wings faster than us. We had to eat 5 or 6 chicken wings, the fastest, which...
And who made them?
It was whiskey wings.
Whiskey.
Really?
Yeah, they were actually really good.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens Open Forum, are you going to speak today, Pam?
I am.
Okay, and if you would swear her in, please.
Oh, we don't have to be sworn.
Oh, you don't have to? Not here? Okay.
Okay, cool. Well, I am Pamela Settle, And let me adjust this a little bit. Hello, everybody. First, thank you for your service to this committee. The city charter is so important. I'm here, I want to address a couple of items. First, it was brought to my attention that last month there was no discussion in Article 3 regarding forfeiture of office. And I can see from the minutes that no citizens came to the meeting to discuss that. So my guess is that citizens in general don't really know about these meetings or what's being discussed. So I just wanted to come and share my personal experience, having just been on the campaign trail for many months. The issue is definitely on the minds of our Oldsmar citizens and has been since last August. I was in most all of our neighborhoods, and in talking to people, I'll call it a distaste in their mouths, and it ranged from mild to strong on the recent issue that you all know what I'm speaking of. There seemed to be a sense of helplessness, but also a sense of resignation. It was their perception that the city council had simply chosen not to take any action. But going back to last August, when deciding to become a candidate for city council, I spoke with our mayor, who explained to me that really it was the city charter that was limiting the city council from being able to take any action. And so that's what I told people. So now in looking back at that scenario and thinking proactively about the future, I encourage this body to go back and look at Article 3 as part of your due diligence to the citizens who aren't here, the ones who were speaking up in private because they didn't know who else to talk to. This request doesn't go against any one particular person, but it is part of the job, and this is the right place and the right time for this discussion. So I might look at other city charters and make a fair comparison. Taking a look at letter A in that section where it addresses qualifications in Article 6, but Article 6 really only speaks of how to qualify. It doesn't mention things like sobriety or other behaviors that could be construed as unbecoming of an elected official. Also in letter B, the word convicted is limiting because time between an event and a conviction could be lengthy. And also it says convicted of a felony or a crime involving conduct contrary to justice, honesty, or good morals, which to me is very vague and is open to interpretation. So if the charter is in fact an impediment to protecting the city in the future, then I hope we would take a look at it and see if it needs to be fixed. And if the research is done and the decision is made that the language is sufficient, then at least we have taken an honest and a hard look at that issue. The second item today I'd like to reference is in both Article 3 and 4, and it regards city elections. The charter doesn't go into detail about how municipal elections are conducted, but it does say that the city clerk manages the election and abides by state statutes. Most people don't know that the county supervisor of elections does not supervise our city elections. They're contracted by the city to handle the ballots. So the city makes its own rules. So I'd like to call attention to a few issues that came up in the election that I think we should take a good look at. One, absentee ballots are on the rise. People have used them. They were encouraged to use them in November. However, city elections don't use drop boxes. And so we had voters showing up at the library wanting to drop their ballot in a secure drop box, but we don't have those for municipal elections. So I'd like to encourage that we work with the county to see if we could institute this practice, which is actually not being done by municipalities, but could be. And I think that that would be a great service to the residents of Oldsmar, especially our older voters who really were looking for that option. Secondly, and just also, there were 38 ballots that were returned late. So there were people who showed up at the library looking for the drop box, had to mail them, and they were returned late. So 38 votes weren't counted. And when there's an election that's separated by 8 votes, 38 votes is important to the candidates and to the voters. Also, how we communicate our elections is really up to the city. And what I found, what my team found, was that most everybody that we contacted about our election, people didn't know that there was a city election. The era of city newspapers is gone. It's hard to communicate with residents, and so I'd like to see us do more, work harder at informing our citizens about their own city elections. Even on election day, it was very, very frustrating that people were driving by saying, "What's this election for?" They didn't know. And lastly, the state is stepping up to ban the practice of ballot harvesting by political organizations. The challenge here is on voter education and also on enforcement. So I'd like to see the city adopt a no ballot harvesting position for city elections. And it may be that you all have the opportunity to expand the language on the charter that addresses some of these issues. Maybe not, but I would like to at least place them up for discussion so that you all know that these are ways that perhaps the charter could benefit the city in the future. So thank you for your time. Thank you again for your service. I appreciate you.
Okay, no one else to speak. That closes our citizens' open forum. Need approval of the minutes of the April 5th meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
And are we allowed to comment on the citizens' comments or no?
So normally under citizens' comments, you don't comment back. It's not a conversation back and forth. They're giving you their comments, and then you can, during your process of review, address them, but there's usually not a conversation back and forth.
Okay, item number 2, since Sean is not here, can we move that to our next month's meeting? Or do we want to, since he was the lead on that, do we want to proceed without him? What should we?
It's up to you, whatever you want to do. My suggestion is that you pass it because he was the one in direct.
Right, okay, I just wasn't sure whether it was something he should be.
Well, I do know that this is of interest for Brian Mahoney, and he won't be here at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
This was that dollar amount of the
Right.
bond,
Okay,
and the number we came up with was 157, what was it?
Well, I didn't know the exact dollar amount I was estimating, but we did get that information. And that was provided by Cindy Neno, and it is
1 point,
$1,580,000,000. I'm sorry, is that right?
Yes.
$1,580,238,473 in value.
And I know that they'll never do anything with that, but them having the ability, what is it, 50%
Yes.
for a bond is, I was hoping we could discuss bringing that down to around 10%, because that's still a huge amount, and if they need that much more money, then it should be something that the residents.
so are you making a motion to reduce that from the 50 to the 10? Is that what you want to do that?
So move.
Do I have,
I need a second, though.
does everyone understand what Brian's trying to do with this?
I guess, yeah, so basically.
It's in section 101, it's
Yep,
number
yep,
2
I
on
s-
our, yeah.
I see
section
that, yeah.
101, instead of having the ability for 50% of bondage on the assessed value, which we weren't sure of that figure, which we then obtained. He's feeling that 50% of 1.5 billion is a bit much. So he's wanting to reduce that down to 10% of the 1.5. Am I correct? Yes.
Could there be any downside to that? I don't really see one.
It's,
What if,
Speak your piece, that's what we're here for.
can I talk?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
So like let's say a hurricane comes in and floods the place, then our $1 billion is not gonna be $1 billion anymore. So shouldn't there be at least a threshold to make the 10%? I don't know.
yeah, my concern is that them having the ability to do
To
a
bond
bond for
at that.
750 million in one fell swoop without citizens, and I know they won't, but that's my concern. Tom, what's the biggest one they've done in the last 25 years? It's gotta be the plant, right? Reclaimed water?
I don't remember the exact amount, but it's never been greater than $20 million for any city that I've worked with.
So would you feel comfortable with 25%? Just, I mean, since it's never reached that level, and then you're not making such a dramatic pendulum swing.
Well, I'm also realizing that, which would actually address some of your things, that it's gonna go from here to city council for discussion. And my concern is that if we start at 25, it's gonna go up from there, versus the 10% and then work their way up. I mean, we're still talking 150 million is 10%. And the 150 million would still be based on previous, so when the hurricane hits, that's a hell of a lot of money for 15,000 of us in Oldsmar to essentially be accountable for if someone decides to do it.
I second changing it to 10%.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we've agreed to change that to the 10% from the 50% that Sean submitted. Okay, any other changes to what we did last month? Everyone out comfortable with all the other changes that were submitted? All right. Then we'll move on to Mr. Mahoney, since you have Article 6.
I don't have a lot of verbiage per se, and I hate to say I'm gonna be asking, you two guys a lot of questions. Predominantly when I'm looking at it in sections 1, 2, and 3, although I may wanna evaluate a little bit, but I'm okay. I don't see anything in sections 1, 2, or 3 that I think, me personally, needs to be changed. When I'm looking at section 4, the two things that I really wanted to do was potentially raise the filing fee up. I don't know, did you guys get copies from Ann on the filing fees? And I just see it's $25 for an hour of Ann's time when she's going over everything with you. Is a small amount, but at the same time, I would encourage everybody to run. So when I'm looking at the other municipalities within Pinellas, I couldn't come up with a rational number, but I just felt like 25 hadn't been changed in some time. But I don't know that moving it from 25 to 100 is going to help us pay off our $750 million bond. So I don't know. I just thought that was one of the numbers that we should be looking at in section C. The other one was, I really wanted to ask Ann, was on the 150 qualified. How often do we get people that are at 140 or 130 that don't make it? Is there a cutoff?
So what we do is we ask them to turn in more than that, especially in the beginning, because a lot of them can be disqualified and stuff like that. And we make sure that the supervisor of elections checks 5 beyond that in case any are questioned afterwards, so that nobody's disqualified that way. So typically they'll turn in probably close to 200 to become qualified. And just to make a point though, that's the candidates getting to know who they're going to be representing. I think it's actually a valuable exercise and experience and getting to know, and a good way to communicate between the public and the city.
So I didn't know if either of those numbers in B and C was something that I was hoping we would discuss and see if anybody had any thoughts on it.
I think 150 is a good number, like Ann said, because you've got to figure you're going to get 200 plus.
Right.
You know, no matter what, you're going to get those additional cards. And, you know, the filing fee is, you know, as Tom told us in the beginning, are we changing something just to change something, or are we changing something to fix something and make it better? I mean, if it's,
Well, does $25 cover the cost of the expenses for the printing, the packet, and all that? You think, Ann? Ann's getting her steps in today.
A Fitbit. You know, not really, but I think it's just a commitment, and you know, and just kind of a symbolic, I guess. It's not going to cover all the paper and, you know, how often we have to make a copy or something, stuff like that, or even close to our time. But we're really not looking at reimbursement. We're looking at them understanding from the beginning that if they spend money, it's got to come out of their campaign account, and that needs to be that first check, and this is what's important. So that's really what we're looking at with this, that commitment for that filing fee. Yeah.
You going?
we can come back to it, yeah?
All right, so in section D, I was trying to understand the verbiage and you were getting into legalese and dates and days. And in section D, it says petitions shall be filled with the city clerk no more than 49 days and not less than 17 days prior to the final ballot language being approved by the city council. What does that mean in English? And I know it's the days, but
It used to be that this was related to the date of the election, when that would have to be met. And then we had changed it to be based on the date when city council approves the final ballot language, because what the supervisor of election requires can change during the years. So I wanted to make it flexible based on an action that the city did. And we wanted to make it the same 30-day period, basically. And so that's why that language is in there, because that would support, that I know it reads funny, that's basically what it's saying, a 30-day period. But we don't want it too soon before the final ballot language is completed. And so that kind of just ties it all in together. That's why it's written that way.
okay.
It is a little weird.
So once they file their paperwork, you would give them the dates of the 17, whatever the 17 days.
Oh, yeah, we've already set up the calendar well before then, before the qualifying period starts. You know, this year it's going to be October 19th to November 19th. Then we have a resolution that gets adopted by council setting those dates. Yeah.
Then the rest of it, honestly, was getting into the state law. The last one was on the next page, where it was asking for the quorum to be at 50%.
Which one are you on at what point?
I am on 6.6, but on the next page, at the very top, and I'm squinting as much as I can when I have glasses. Legislative clerk. So the second to last sentence on the first paragraph on that page, a majority of the members of the canvassing board shall constitute a quorum of the canvassing board. The canvassing board shall ensure that that the ballots cast for any election are fairly and accurately counted. And I was just curious if there was a reasoning behind, sorry, Ann. Behind the 2/3 or 50% or quorum, versus a 2/3, so you actually had to have somebody there.
I understand.
Let's have this last sentence right here.
Oh.
Actually started reading it there.
Yeah, majority of the members. Well, I mean, the canvassing board is 5 members, so that's 3 no matter how you look at it.
Gonna get 3 no matter what, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
alright. And then the only other one was petty, which was the qualified elector shall be hearing qualified as a resident of the city on the day of the election, properly registered in accordance with. And I guess that seemed rushed that day you were doing it, but then you could still be a qualified elector, which means you're just a voter. Yeah, then I'm fine. Let them do it. I've got nothing else. That was it.
Okay,
I do. Can I say?
go for it.
Okay, I feel like section 602, nonpartisan elections, there's one sentence, all elections for the city council shall be nonpartisan, is not sufficient enough to describe that, in my opinion.
What do you think it should say?
I think it should say more of things that you're not supposed to do when you're having a nonpartisan election. So I just feel like one sentence is very small for that. It's a huge thing, and it becomes a problem sometimes when people who are running might do some things on the side that are not nonpartisan.
Okay,
So I feel like there should be more like guidelines of what you can and cannot do there.
such as having your particular party affiliation helping you? Is that what you're leaning towards? I'm just trying to get
If it's
clarity.
truly nonpartisan, then what you are should not come into play at all. It should just be citizens of our city, not one or the other or the third, like me. But there have been in the past, like registering on websites that are a certain party,
Okay,
like actively doing that, or going out with people of a party to canvass for not just this, but other things, but for themselves at the same time.
is that something that the city is, I mean, it's,
City of Dunedin has some provisions in their charter that specifically, well, actually it's in their code, I think, that specifically references what nonpartisan means. And they prohibit, as an example, someone being involved in a meeting in a partisan type event. And then they also have provisions that provide that you cannot receive donations from organizations that are party affiliated. And so it has, in those code provisions, it talks about things that you shouldn't do. And if you do it, then there are consequences. But frankly, the consequences in Dunedin, as an example, is just a fine, up to $500. Doesn't have anything to do with whether or not that you've
you're
lost.
eligible, it doesn't
Yeah,
impact your eligibility to continue to run or win or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
would you like to see a copy of that language
I
before
would.
we proceed? Can you get us a copy of that?
sure, absolutely.
Ann, okay.
So they don't allow for partisan,
They state that they don't, and they state that there are fines associated, as he just said. However,
God
it
bless
does not,
America.
does not make you ineligible to continue your race, or if you win, it does not make you, does not negate your win.
$20,000 from the partisan party and then get fined $500 and pay
Right.
that from the 20,000?
Unless you have some ethics.
No, you don't pay it from the 20,000. You have to pay it from your own money.
From your own money,
Yeah.
not from your fund.
So you're saying a partisan party, so you're saying, let's say if it was the North Pinellas Republican Club or something, they couldn't actually, you're saying you wouldn't want them to give a candidate money.
It's not so much money. I mean, I guess that's part of it, but if you are advertising that you're running on partisan websites, because people don't do all of the research that they can do sometimes about what candidates stand for. And so if you're just gonna go and look at who am I voting for here and look at a line of people as part of this website, I just don't think that's appropriate. I don't know, I don't think you should put yourself on partisan material that, if it's a nonpartisan race, if it truly is a nonpartisan race. And I think, like Tom said, I just like having something in there that says, please don't do this, and this, rather than one sentence. I just don't think it's thorough enough.
We just need to expound on it a little more.
Yeah.
But if an individual donates money, and they're of course affiliated, like if they're Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter if it's just a single person.
Right.
Right.
It's just more the intent of the person who's running, I think, that needs to be spelled out, not necessarily donors. I don't know. I guess it's messy, but I think the intent of the person that's running should be to be cleanly nonpartisan and not do things on the side that would support them unfairly against other candidates.
Yes, Ginger.
Kelly makes a great point. Is there a way we can table this for a future meeting where we can see what Dunedin
He's-
wrote, see?
I'm trying to find it right now. I was gonna read it to you.
Okay.
I
I'm
mean, it's
pulling
a
it
fine
up.
line between, it's a very fine line, so we want to do this correctly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Tom's looking for that,
And while he's looking, one of the things that I wanted to do, and I spent probably way too much time, according to my wife, looking, was I feel like over the last, gosh, I guess 17 years I've been here now, I feel like there's been this, we went from the nice community to where the monetary outlays for elections, the expenses has been getting exorbitant. And I was hoping that there was some way to cap it. But all of my research said that there's not. Even in California, where there's a few cities that did it, it was a suggestion or recommendation, but unenforceable. So I understand your frustration
Yeah.
there.
I think that's a great point. You can spend $10,000 and advertise, and have people hired to come and canvass for you, or you can get to know the people yourself. And I agree. I agree. It just is kind of inequitable in some ways, and I think it should be
Okay.
tightened up.
You got it, Tom?
So it's titled a little bit different than what this would be titled, but and it's not in the charter, it's in their code. And it says, and this is section 26-202 of the Dunedin Code, is titled Unfair Campaign Practice. It shall be an unfair campaign practice for a candidate to elective city office or an agent or authorized representative of the candidate on behalf of such candidate to, number one, campaign by way of announcements, publications, or other forms of political advertisement as a registered member of any political party. Number two, campaign by way of announcements, publications, or other forms of political advertising in such a manner as to indicate that such candidate is not a registered member of a particular party. Number three, solicit or accept contributions or open assistance or support from any partisan political club or association affiliated with any political party or from any political party. Number four is participate in any partisan political party function, provided, however, that such candidate or agent of a candidate may register and vote as a member of a political party and may attend and speak at a political party event, function or event, provided that all candidates for the city office have been invited and permitted to participate in the same manner and to the same extent. Or, paragraph 5, any person committing any act prohibited by this section shall be guilty of an unfair campaign practice and a municipal ordinance violation punishable as provided in section 1-15 of this code, which that provision of the code says up to $500 for every violation.
That's That's not part of their charter, though. You said it's part of
It's
their.
part of the code. I'm not sure if we have that provision in our code here in Oldsmar under elections. Sorry? Yeah, I don't think we do either.
And gotta love YouTube. We can't discuss this anywhere, so I might as well do it. I have to do it here. So it's my understanding from what I've been told over the years that people get monetary donations from one party or another when they're running with our nonpartisan, and they've been using that, and that is the bulk of their campaign financing. Are you saying you want that to stop? And I don't know if that transpires. I really don't. Just what I've been told.
I honestly did not think that. I didn't think about the money side of it, really. I did not think about donations, although that makes perfect sense too. I really am focusing on the ethical behavior of the person that's running. And so whatever that means, I don't know about the money part, but to me it means don't do things on the side that identify you with the political party of voters that are going to vote for you. That's all. So if we want to, if we want to expand it to the money, that's fine. That sounds reasonable. That's not the issue that bugs me though.
Don't say you're nonpartisan and wink wink over here and go do that.
Right, and go where there are websites with your name on it that you're running for. No, that's not nonpartisan, which is why the one line is not enough.
Tom, is it customary for this part of the charter to be one line and this addressed in city codes? Or is it something that should be in the charter?
This is your Bible as to the bones of what you're doing here in the city. Normally, you don't go into a whole bunch of detail in the charter like that. Normally, it's in the code. And so you don't want this thing to be so heavy and include stuff in it that makes it so difficult to change. Because remember, once it's in your charter, it's there basically forever. And it's very difficult to take it out. And so that's the kind of stuff that you would normally put, like Dunedin has put it in their code.
Can you, in this document, say, please refer to, or is that not appropriate in this document? Please refer to code for conduct.
It's not necessary to do that because we would do that anyhow. Yeah.
So is this committee, being that there's one line we get to work with here, can we make recommendations to the council for a possible change in code? How does that work?
So the answer is yes. What we could do at the end of your report when you're done, although this is not a charter issue, we would make the following recommendations and then they can do what they want with them. And we've done that before. Where we come across something in the charter that we need to address in the code or vice versa. So yes, you can include it in your report.
Would you do us a favor and maybe, so we can table this part for next month, but send us a copy of the Dunedin code and then our section, and then that everyone has a copy of what ours reads currently with what Dunedin, which addresses it in quite detail, and then we can have a better discussion in our next meeting as to whether, how we want to add our recommendation at the end. Leaving this, maybe changing a word or two in this, but again, keeping it fairly general, but as Tom says, put our recommendations at the end.
And what I'm reading from it, I'm really good with everything you're saying. When I read that line, it was literally saying, we're not going to tell you what they're affiliated with. So it's not going to happen.
Right.
But I really like your thoughts. Quite a bit.
I do know that as candidates are going out and people ask them all the time, well, what party?
What are you?
Well, it's nonpartisan, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but what
It
party
does
are you?
matter.
As candidates, they're almost forced to tell residents what party they're affiliated with, even though it is supposed to be nonpartisan, and I love it that it's nonpartisan. And I wish the whole world was nonpartisan.
Yeah. And that's understandable that they get asked that question. Of course, people want to know, but answering a question that was asked, even though that's difficult, but I get that, is different from putting yourself out there, on a purposeful kind of endeavor to make it known. I have one more thing I want to say too, and this maybe go nowhere or have no place, but I feel like along the same lines, I feel like conduct is a big thing. And so when you said unfair campaign practice, is it anywhere of what city council members can and cannot do when there's an election happening? Is that anywhere? And here's my specific complaint, is having a city council member walk the streets and canvass for one of the people that are running.
No, I don't believe there is any prohibition for that.
I'd like to talk about that too. Putting that somewhere or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I've never heard of any city or county regulating that. You're basically telling someone that they can't do something on their own personal time just because they have a title.
Yeah, but it also is an unfair advantage if there's a sitting council member with a lot of influence walking door to door and supporting one candidate and even saying things that aren't becoming about the others. I know it probably doesn't go anywhere, but I'm just sharing my opinions and experience, and I'd like that to be somewhere too, if there's a place for that.
Any other for Article 6?
No, we're gonna review this next meeting, right? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. Paula, the floor is yours.
Yes, okay. All right. Article 7. Everything looked pretty good to me. The only change that I saw, and this is actually recommended by our city clerk, Ann, was changing the at least every 5 years to every 10 years. Because although a lot can change in 10 years, historically the actual reviews are about 10 years apart. And the nature of the charter is such that it should not be subject to change too often. So she actually recommended changing it from 5 years to every 10 years. And she did say that it is the basis of people granting the authority to the government and carries more weight than the code of ordinances. So 10 years seems a more natural increment from 5. There is a mechanism in place should citizens request a specific change between reviews.
Yeah, as long as there's a mechanism to come back in should we want to, then, you know.
So I don't get to do this again in 5 years, is what you're saying?
I will see you in 10 years.
I'll need the steps by then.
Okay.
The way that this, I'm just gonna jump in here, the way this reads is it says at least once every. So at any point in time, if someone from the audience wanted to step forward and say, look, it's time to address this particular thing, obviously the council can do that on their own, or they can appoint the committee sooner than whatever this says. I mean, we could literally have one every year. So there is some savings grace that even if you do extend it out for 10 years, that's not just saying it can't happen. This is just saying you absolutely have to do it
every
by
time.
this time frame.
Okay.
So by changing it, you're not prohibiting that. But I will tell you that when Ann and I will look at it, though, we're going to set it 10 years out, unless we hear some other direction if you change it. So
What's let's say at a city council meeting, some citizen gets up and says, you need to look at this part of the city charter, we don't agree with it. And then what? Is it one citizen says something and there's a charter review committee, or what's the process?
no, someone could come up and then the council could say, we really haven't thought about that. That's a good idea. Why don't we get some input from city staff, the city attorney's office, city clerk's office, city manager's office, come back and give us your thoughts and suggestions relative to addressing this particular issue. And if they say that, okay, well, we're going to advance that, Trask, go ahead and prepare an ordinance, then I would prepare an ordinance. It would have 2 public hearings, and then that ordinance does not become effective until such time as the referendum takes place, which we don't call special elections for just one referendum question. It would be pushed on to the next municipal election, which may be a year or 2 years down the road. And then it would have the public vote on it at that time. But yeah, so we can move them forward just by even the mayor or one of the council members saying, you know, I really think we need to make this change. It doesn't require some from the audience. I just made a suggestion that, you know, anybody can step forward and suggest something.
Okay, so instead of, I'm just trying to talk this out loud. So instead of the charter review committee meeting, it would be if there's a change that people think necessary, it would go to a referendum vote, basically, in the
and
long.
These are two.
Yeah, any change here in this charter is gonna go to referendum. The charter review committee looks at the whole charter. I'm suggesting if someone wanted to change one code section, like Pam stepped up and she said, you know, we really need to address this one thing. And so they may just decide, okay, we'll just take out that one piece and we'll move forward on that. But, so there is an opportunity. The point I was trying to make is that just because it says every 10, it's at least every 10. Yeah, okay.
All right.
So do we have to make a motion on that, or?
I don't think we do. I don't need to make a motion just because we're, just do the whole section. Yeah. All right, is everyone comfortable with 10?
I'd like to know what the usual amount of time a mayor is the mayor. Is that
3.
3 years? And then they could go to 6 if they get reelected?
Can they go to, so they can do 2 terms
As council,
as council, and then slide over and do 2 terms as mayor?
correct.
So they could do 12.
Is the vice mayor a 1 year and it's reappointed every year somebody different? Okay. Is there any, like, you can't, I mean, you could have it 1 year, skip a year and then have it again? Are there any? Yeah.
No, it's appointed position.
I just didn't know that.
So do we have to make a motion for the 10-year change
I-
to recommend or not?
Well, we just needed some direction, but the answer is yes, it would be
Yes.
best if we had a motion.
Okay,
And
May I have a
we're talking
motion?
about two sections, 702, 7.02 and 7.03, right?
correct.
Okay.
Right,
Paula,
yes,
since
yep,
it's yours,
yep.
you want to go ahead?
So I make a motion in Article 7, Section 7.02 and 7.03 to change the wording from at least once every 5 years to be at least once every 10 years.
Second. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Hey,
That's what carried, 3-2.
Bill, yep, 4. Ginger.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's over there.
Okay, 4-2.
All right, go to section 704 next.
Well, that was all I had for my whole,
Okay, so
Yep, yep.
no other changes.
nope, I didn't see any other changes.
Anyone else have changes that they wanted to, Article 7?
Ask a question on the emergency ordinance. Does that have anything to do with like the special powers for, say,
Which section are you on, under C?
emergency ordinance?
Okay.
yeah, 704.
Mm-hmm, C.
What is the definition of what that would be? Does that have to do with like the COVID ordinances like they had during the health
Yes,
emergency?
yes, that was an emergency. It still is an emergency in some cities. Any flooding incident, hurricane, tornado, you know, it could be an emergency if, you know, City Hall collapsed. I mean, there would have to be something of significance.
Well, why was the city ordinance overruled by the county? Are we subject to whatever rules they have?
Yes,
So it really doesn't matter what our rules are?
we can be more restrictive than the county is,
Mm-hmm.
so.
But we can't be less restrictive.
Correct.
Okay.
And does that tree continue to go up?
Yes.
Mhm.
This section is basically addressing an issue that normally an ordinance requires 2 public hearings, and it requires it to be done within a certain period of time, certain days in between, and that type of thing. This just says they can just do an emergency ordinance. They need a supermajority to do it, and then it says how long it's gonna stay in effect. And so, whether this is in the charter or not, it's in state statutes. There's a provision in it that allows us to do it anyhow. This just makes it a little bit clearer because it's setting forth a procedure and when it's effective and when it ends and that type of thing.
Okay.
So it's very helpful to be in the charter.
So the state statute would supersede and tell us how to do it no matter what we wrote in this, right?
Well, there may be an emergency in Oldsmar that's not an emergency in Pinellas County otherwise, or the state, and so this is basically an
Yeah,
emergency
guideline.
here. And so that's how we're trying to regulate it, deal with it, a local emergency. Sometimes it's wider spread like the COVID thing.
Any other questions? All right.
Can I ask one, this is not in this one, but back to the one prior for just a minute. I just wanna,
Which section?
the-
1 or 3? Just
no, I mean of it's Article 6.
oh, okay.
Are we done with Article 7? Okay. I just wondered if Pam came and talked about the Dropbox and communication, is there a place for that to be addressed in here, like at the end of Article 6 where we talk about ballots cast for any election are fairly, it's not really, well, I don't know, I guess it is the counting, because if ballots aren't making, if there's 38 ballots that didn't make it, and we assume, or fairly or unfairly, that the Dropbox might have been part of the problem for that.
Right, so we're very, very limited by the Florida statutes and the election code and supervisor of elections as far as what they'll support and what we can do. We couldn't, for instance, collect them on our own and take them there. It has to be 2 people accompanying any ballots that are collected, and they have to be taken to that office by a certain time every day, and there's all these things, so I don't think that you could put something in the charter that's gonna tell the supervisor of elections what to do. I think, if I understood Pam's request, it was that the city would work with the county to do something for municipal elections that's more in line with what the voters experience in the larger elections. Yeah, which, we can do that. We just need to reach out and have that dialogue started. It's just hard
That's
to.
not at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I just
but-
didn't wanna, I wanted to address what I think are good points, and I didn't know if this was not the place.
Yeah, but I can reach out to Julie Marcus and at least have the discussion, or even bring it up, because Kathy and I will be going to the Pinellas County Clerks Association next week, or no, week after, and we can, next week, and bring it up as a discussion item, and I can even give you an update with what the feel is out there for this, because we aren't the only city that experiences the disparity, and the voter, what they experience for a national election should be the same experience for their own hometown election. So, yeah, and I'll make sure you're part of that update.
And before you run away, I was wondering, would this be another area where we could talk about ballot harvesting? Maybe would this be the place to have that? Wouldn't that be an unfair campaign practice?
You wanna-
I'm not well versed in it right now to throw anything out there.
Yeah, I don't really understand what the issue is, so I don't know if I can give you anything that would be helpful here.
We're bouncing. I'll take the ball. As far as the reason I voted no on the 5 versus the 10
Uh-huh.
is my concern is tenure. That it's nice to have Tom sitting here that's been through how many of these, you don't need to tell me, but it's been more than 2 or 3. And it's the same with our esteemed clerk. So I just guess that as we stretch things out, that we lose some of that knowledge base. of what's happening, and that's where, and I like poking people every 5 years anyway, but that was my rationale.
Okay. Well, we covered 6 and 7 today, and our next meeting, I believe, is, I have an article and you do, correct. Okay, so we'll cover those two in our next meeting. Anything else that needs to be discussed today?
Yes, actually, the July meeting, that's the day after the 4th of July,
Mhm.
and apparently, that's a national holiday, and the city is closed on Monday, July 5th.
So we need to reschedule that one, Ann?
Say there's no meeting.
It would be good to keep the momentum going, and of course, it depends on when Tom is available. This room is open on the 2nd and 3rd Monday, but not the 4th Monday in July.
So you and Brian are not here in June, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So we need to make sure that Brian can attend in June, so we have sufficient, correct?
Well, we're talking about July.
No, but you two won't be here next.
Correct, we won't be here in June.
That's what I'm saying, we need to make sure
Oh,
that Sean,
Sean,
yes, Sean, sorry.
we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, even if
Okay,
Sean
that's,
doesn't,
okay,
but yes.
all right. So you're saying July, so the 12th?
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, 12th or the 19th.
Is everyone okay with the 12th?
Mhm.
Okay,
I need a second to see.
Tom, how are you on the 12th?
I'm good.
are you good with that one, Tom? Okay,
I'm good on the 12th.
okay. 5:30?
Yep.
Okay. Then we will do that. Any other items to be discussed today? Need a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor?